What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Sector for Nerds, and welcome to another episode of Star Wars The Clone Wars Retro Discussions. Today we're here to talk about Season 3, Episode 12, Nightsisters. This episode was directed by Giancarlo Volpe and written by Katie Lucas. The cookie for this episode: the swiftest path to destruction is through vengeance. Before we begin, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Plenty of great content coming your way every single week. You guys definitely don't want to miss out on any of it. Oh, you guys, I have been waiting so long to get to this point in the Clone Wars. The point where I feel that this show, Clone Wars was already at a certain level, in my opinion, in terms of how good it was. But from this moment forward, we kick things to a whole nother stratosphere. And I am so excited to begin talking with you guys about this episode, part 1 of 3 of this arc about the Nightsisters. Now, the Nightsisters, it's an interesting concept, right? So the Nightsisters, they had their comics and everything. They had their lore before this show. The way that I knew the Nightsisters was from a DS game called Star Wars Jedi Alliance. And for those who don't know, I actually went back and played through that game on my channel. It was one of the first things that I ever did on this channel, because it had been so long since I had played them and there was so much that I didn't remember. It was a very exciting time. And some of the main villains in that game are the Nightsisters. You have to go up against them constantly. Very different from this show. But again, the concept of the Nightsisters wasn't new to me. And I remember hearing in one of the Clone Wars trailers, that they would have aired on Cartoon Network, Dooku saying something we could certainly use the powers of the Nightsisters against the Jedi. And I'm like, oh my gosh, we're bringing the Nightsisters into this? So very excited to begin talking about that with you guys today. But intro guy, let us know what's going down in this episode. Give us the rundown. Galactic Showdown. In a fierce battle for survival, the Republic and the Separatist armies have clashed in the distant Sullust system. Count Dooku's most cunning assassin, ASAJJ VENTRESS, leads the vicious attack. Thank you, intro guy. Okay, so first of all, Sullust, that's awesome. That's the homeworld of Nye and Numb right there. You know what else is cool? We get ASAJJ Ventress's micro-series ship. This was another thing that got me excited watching this episode for the first time. I mean, that's the ship that we see her going up against Anakin Skywalker with. We also get to see Sereno for the first time, which is the homeworld of Count Dooku. And we see he's in his castle or whatever, the whole, story behind Dooku, right, is he was, very wealthy or whatever, right? He gave up that wealth when he joined the Jedi Order, and then when he left the Jedi Order, he basically got it all back. But man, already at the start of this episode, we get this crazy moment between Count Dooku and Darth Sidious chatting with one another. And Sidious is there's been a great disturbance in the Force. Your assassin, she's becoming very powerful. And Dooku's yes, of course, my lord. She is quite important to me. And Sidious goes, too important. And Dooku, already knowing where Sidious is going with this, he tries to, respond, but he's just silence. I can sense her powers becoming very strong. I would hate to think that you are training your own Sith apprentice to destroy me. And Dooku goes, no, never. My allegiance is to you and you alone. Then you must prove it. Eliminate her. Once again, Dooku tries to respond, but Sidious just lays down the law. But she's my most trusted. I said eliminate her. And I'm oh my gosh. Dooku, you better friggin' do it, man, or you're screwed. We get this space battle, though. Anakin and Obi-Wan are leading the Republic forces, so we see ASAJJ Ventress going after them.
Ventress, split up! Looks like I'm her favorite. I'm kind of disappointed. Only the droids follow me.
Eventually, we get to a point where they crash into the Separatist ship. Well, 2 of the 3 do, of course. Anakin, being probably the best pilot of them all, makes it in safely with R2-D2, shouts out.
I'm hit!
I'm heading toward the Separatist flagship.
I see you. I've got her.
But Ventress, contacts Dooku, and Dooku says, I've ordered your reinforcements to return. You have failed me for the last time. You are no longer my apprentice, and now you will die.
I've ordered your reinforcements to return.
No, I will destroy the Jedi.
I'll show you.
You have failed me for the last time. You are no longer my apprentice. And now, you shall die.
And then we get this lightsaber battle. We're talking about like how much happens in this episode. We get a lightsaber battle between Ventress going up against Obi-Wan and Anakin in a really good fight. I wouldn't say it's like one of the best fights that, Clone Wars has done or anything like that, but it was really good. There were definitely several moments that took me by surprise, especially the part where Ventress just straight up force chokes both Obi-Wan and Anakin. I think that was kind of meant to signify like how powerful Ventress is becoming. And it does open up the question, right? Like, what were Dooku's intentions? Was it to train Ventress to kill Sidious? But meanwhile, during this battle, Dooku orders one of his, ships to turn their guns on the command ship of not the Republic, but the Separatists, and then start opening fire. So I'm just probably like, I want to see like the viewpoint of the Republic during this battle. Like, they doing over there? Just like how I want to see the droid reaction to Order 66, right? Like when Kiadi-Mundi's charging on the field and all the clones just start shooting them. Man, definitely visible confusion moments for sure. I love when, before the fight starts, Obi-Wan's like, Ventress, you're not looking well. And Anakin just goes, she never does. Damn, man, okay.
Ventress, you're not looking well.
She never does.
Look, Anakin, just because you don't find her attractive doesn't mean that other people don't. I mean, did you see the way Obi-Wan was looking at her, especially in season 1? But anyway, the Separatists start opening fire on the ship. Obi-Wan and Anakin have Ventress beat. But luckily, there was a droid bomber that crashed in the hangar, and because the ship was going down, it's like, all right, we got to get out of here. The droid says, our scans indicate that there were no survivors, and Dooku's just like, oh, very well, recall the fleet. Well, apparently, capturing Sullust or whatever that battle was all about meant nothing to Dooku at that point. His only concern was getting rid of Ventress. And then Dooku contacts Sidious and he says, I have done as you've asked. ASAJJ Ventress is dead. And Sidious just goes, once again, you have proven your loyalty to me. What are Dooku's intentions here? And I think that's something we can definitely tackle more as we get into other episodes of this arc. But for now, we see this scavenger ship. It's actually, I think, the same one that Ganacht was riding along in season 1. These scavengers end up saving Ventress, and to pay them back, she ends up killing them. Although, honestly, they probably were going to end up doing the same to her anyway, so I get it. But she ends up taking the ship to Dathomir. And I'm like, ooh, okay, cool, we're getting to see Dathomir. I think it's one of my favorite planets that they go to. Speaking of things I design, I love the design of the Nightsisters as well, especially the ones with the bow and arrows and the face mask and everything. It's so cool. But then we're introduced to Mother Talzin, who they take Ventress into their sanctuary and they put her on this table and she's saying, bring the water of life. And in this moment, we get this backstory for Ventress. And it talks about how she was a Nightsister, but as a baby she was taken, from the clan to protect it. And then pirates kill her master, but then a Jedi finds her, finds out that she's force sensitive, trains her, and she becomes this Jedi Padawan.
You are strong with the Force, little one.
Then they're on a mission going up against pirates. The master ends up dying. The anger building up in her leads her to the dark side, leads her to Dooku.
I can sense the darkness within you. I will teach you the ways of the dark side, but you must prove yourself first.
And then fast forward, how much longer later she ends up getting betrayed by him. I'll say this much, you guys. I think that this arc, the direction that they take Ventress in this show, I think was sorely needed. Because if we're being honest, okay, Ventress, we see her as this separatist war criminal, one of the big villains of season 1. Then season 2, she gets nothing. And then the first episode that they bring her back for season 3, yes, she's with Grievous, and we get that crossover between the two, which we had never seen before. but she was kind of doing the same exact things that she was doing in season 1. And listen, I understand the people that like micro series Ventress better. Like, I completely get it. But what I love so much about what they do with Ventress in this show is they give her this arc, an arc to like get you invested in the character more, in my opinion. I don't believe that every single person needs to have a story arc like that, like especially villains, I feel like it's overdone to death so much nowadays of like, oh, the villain that's like not truly evil and everything like that. But like seeing this as a kid, like this was one of the first times that I was really ever exposed to a story arc like this. Obviously, I'm always pro good guys. That's how I've always been. And like, even when I'm watching this, I'm like, okay, I don't think I'm necessarily rooting for Ventress yet, but I guess if I have to choose between her versus Dooku, like I'm going for Ventress. But there will come a point, and we can get to it later, where I feel like I really do start rooting for Ventress and becoming, and like where I'm like, okay, no, this story is definitely working and it is paying off 100%. But as for right now, like obviously the thing that's on Ventress's mind is vengeance and killing Dooku, and it kind of just makes you wonder, like, okay, well now what are Ventress's intentions here? Like, is this, oh, she's just gonna use the Nightsisters until she kills Dooku and then she tries to assume power within the Separatists or whatever? I mean, come on, right? Like, if Ventress, let's just say Ventress does kill Dooku, right? Like, Sidious would so be like, become my apprentice, take your master's place at my side. Like, I could have totally seen that happening. Sidious has proven that he can throw people to the wayside if it means finding someone that he feels is more powerful than, the previous apprentice. And at the end of the day, right, like, the whole point for Sidious is to get to Anakin, so however he gets there, I'm sure he wouldn't care. Here's a story for you guys. When I was 10 or 11 years old watching this season, and mind you, my brother is like 3 years younger than me. So we're both, still fairly little watching this show. I do remember the parts of this episode where like the Nightsisters are doing like their magic stuff and they're doing their chants. I remember my mother walking into the room just being like, is this okay for you guys to be watching? Because up until this point, right, like I think she probably would have walked in on us watching Star Wars before and like it wouldn't have been like that big of a deal. Like, oh, it's a kid's show, whatever. And then all of a sudden we start getting like this dark stuff just like out of nowhere. And yeah, it was definitely one of those things where it was like, yeah, I was like a little freaked out watching it the first time, but at the same time I'm like, no, but like I was still enjoying what I was seeing, I was so fascinated by this arc. I legitimately was worried that like we were going to have to stop watching Clone Wars because of this episode. I always say that this is a show that grew with its audience. Like when I started watching this show, I was 8 years old, right? So it's been like 3 years now. So like, yeah, I was getting older and it was definitely, a time where it's like, okay, like this show is growing too. I'm growing. Like, I think it's a perfect fit. Would my brother have been too young? Yeah, probably. Honestly, this is actually something, because I don't know if him and I have ever had this discussion before. So I think, like, my plan is to eventually do, like, a roundtable discussion with him and with a couple of other people talking about, especially, like, these, final few arcs in Season 3. I gotta remind myself, that's one of the things that I have to ask them is, like, hey, what were your guys' thoughts, like, on this arc? First time watching it, because like I mean obviously yeah we would like when my brother and I were kids we would talk about how much we like the episode and everything, but like we never really had like deep conversations about it, you know what I'm saying? Like I wasn't sitting there at 10 years old being like, how does this affect you mentally? We'd have just been talking about like, oh my gosh, those saber battles and Dooku and the pajamas and everything we're gonna get to. Like that's the stuff we're talking about, you know what I'm saying? But Telzin assembles a potion for the Nightsisters, getting back into this episode. It turns Ventress invisible along with 2 other Nightsisters that we're introduced to called Karis and Nadath. So Telzin's got a plan, right? She turns them invisible. No one will be able to see them. But what if Dooku can sense us? Well, Telzin's got a plan for that too. She's got a dart that will knock out his senses and distort his vision. A little bit of foreshadowing later. Really, only one of those 2 things ended up being correct. And then she hands them lightsabers because if Dooku attacks them, he has to believe that they're Jedi. Smart. And Telzin says, deliver your vengeance, sister. and then return to us? That's where I kept asking myself at this time, like, what if Ventress succeeds? Like, obviously she can't. But how would that work? Like, would she actually return to them? Again, like, I still wasn't sure. Like, is Ventress just using these people for her own game? Like, I don't know what's going through her mind, essentially, except for the fact that she wants Dooku dead. So, Ventress, her Nightsisters in arms, they go into the palace. Dooku's just laying on his bed in the most comfortable looking pajamas you'll ever see. They are probably very expensive, knowing him. He's not going to spend like millions of credits making better battle droids. He's not going to make destroyers that have shields all the time. But you know what he is going to do? He's going to buy the most fine-looking pajamas that you will ever see in this show or anywhere. So Ventress blows the dart into Dooku's neck. Dooku immediately just like grabs for his lightsaber and he's like, what sorcery is this? It knocks out his vision for sure. Here's one problem. And I feel like Ventress should have known this. When going up against the Force, when training to become a Jedi, you must be able to see what cannot be seen. This is where I feel like Dooku's Jedi training actually prepared him for this encounter.
I do not need my eyes to see you, Jedi.
This is one of my favorite fights in the entire show. Dooku is just moving around so freely, man. Like, the fact that he is just taking on these Nightsisters, he is in pajamas and he has no vision. And he's just sitting there. You wouldn't know any of this is happening because, like, my man is just moving around, just backing up, forward, deflecting every saber shot. He's like freaking kicking Nightsisters that are crawling off the walls. That shot of them like walking down the hallway is so good, and all the, you know, choreography in that part of the fight is so good. But like the one Nightsister that's crawling along the wall and then jumps off, Dooku's ready to sit there like about to like attack the two that are standing in front of him, but he turns around and is like, wait a second, there's one behind me. And so he kicks her off the ledge. I'm like, damn, this girl stood no chance. Like that third Nightsister, I don't know if that was supposed to be Nada Thurkaris, but like she didn't get like any offense in on him, because immediately when she tries to go for him, it's like she gets force pulled into the wall, then she runs into the room, crawls along the wall, only to, once she gets off the wall, to get kicked off by Dooku. That shot, though, of like them zooming in on Dooku's face as he turns on the saber, I'm like, these Nightsisters are screwed. Oh, I love this. I don't know if this part was meant to be a callback to the micro series, but either way, I look at it as such and I love it. Ventress ends up pushing Dooku like towards a table, and it's like, oh no, he's down. And then the two Nightsisters jump on top of the table. Ventress slowly walks toward him, pushes his saber away, and, you know, Dooku's just got his head down like, oh no, I have lost. And the second Ventress raises her lightsaber, and I saw this coming a mile away as a kid. Ventress raises her lightsaber. You quickly, like right before it cuts to him blasting them with the Force lightning, you see like this slight smile appear on his face, like, gotcha! Ah! And he gets them. And the reason I say it's a callback to the micro series, because there's a moment like when Dooku and Ventress are talking with each other, and he says, Sith have no fear, and I sense much fear in you. And Ventress says, you are a foolish old man who knows nothing of the dark side. She activates her sabers and like raises them to like try to strike him down, and Dooku zaps her with Force lightning. Again, I don't know if that was meant to be a callback to that, but it was one of those things where like I thought back to that moment and just like I could sense that moment coming a mile away. I'm like, no, Ventress, don't raise it! Oh, I love this so much. And like, this is the first time I feel like that we actually get to see Dooku like fighting in Clone Wars, like his style and everything. Because we talk about the Clone Wars movie, you guys. You watch that movie, it does not feel like Dooku fighting at all. It feels very wooden. You know, someone who's meant to be like this great swordsman, this great duelist. This fight, you could see it. And now that I'm thinking about it, you guys, I think this is the first like Dooku saber fight that we get in this show besides the movie, right? Well done, everyone involved. So the Nightsisters return to Talzin, and Talzin goes, where one sees failure, others see opportunity. Talzin says, look, your infiltration has proven that Dooku is vulnerable. So with that in mind, he's going to be eager to protect himself. And he will do that by finding a replacement for you. So then Talzin contacts Count Dooku. The two appear to know each other. No animosity. It's just like, oh, what's up, Mother Talzin? How may I help you? And Talzin's like, look, it's come to my attention that you've lost your most prized assassin. Perhaps you'd like something different from us. Perhaps a male from our planet would be more to your liking, since the female didn't work out. And Dooku's like, I shall take you up on that. And then the episode ends with Ventress saying, I will see Count Dooku dead, I swear it. So you shall, sister, so you shall. Which, by the way, that echo in Mother Talzin's voice, like every time she talks, I love that as a concept. And I guess that idea was Dave's when working on this show. And this was really, I think, the first episode in the Clone Wars where like we really get the bad guy's perspective for the majority of it. We see Anakin and Obi-Wan at the beginning of the episode, but that's it. And then it's all like basically through the eyes of Ventress, who I would argue at this point is still on the evil side of things. I wouldn't necessarily say that the Nightsisters are good by any means. But yeah, I do want to give a shout out to Katie Lucas, who wrote this arc, George Lucas's daughter. And it's so crazy, you guys, because she had started working on this show. I was like watching some behind the scenes for these episodes, and she had started on the show when she was 17, and she was just leaving for college. And at the time, her dad wanted her to write a story for this show, and that story ended up being Jedi Crash, which ironically is like one of my favorite episodes of season 1. Like that arc with that 2-episode arc with Ayla Secure in it. I've talked about before how much I love those 2 episodes. And Jedi Crash, like it was so different and fun, and the music was amazing. Like it was so different from anything else in the show. I loved it. Now fast forward to season 3, this was the first time that she actually got to be in the writer's room, like for this show. And it was funny, one of the things that she had pitched, because whenever you're in like these writers' rooms or whatever, like everyone will kind of pitch their own ideas for the show. And one of the things that Katie wanted to see Ventress have in this arc was a mohawk, which you end up seeing her have in like the flashback scenes. Man, what an episode. This episode, man, like changes the trajectory of the entire show. This episode right here is the kickstart for a certain someone to make his return later on, and turns the entire Clone Wars concept upside down in a way. Man, I love this so much. I believe that is going to wrap us up for today, you guys. Next week, we are going to be talking about Clone Wars Season 3, Episode 13, Part 2 to this Nightsisters arc, Monster, where a pretty important new character makes his debut. Thank you guys so much for checking this out. Be sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, share this video with others to help support the channel. If there was ever a time to get on board with this series, you guys, that I'm doing, it is right now. I will see you guys next time.